Ashley, I don't mean to alarm you, but there is a deer in the room with us. Right now, there is a deer trampling all over this room.
Where? I don't see it.
He's right over in the corner. He's going to trample us.
I think you're wrong.
I think this has something to do with all the people disappearing in the world.
People disappeared? What?
Yeah, like 20% of the world's population disappeared. It's more like 2 out of every 250 people. But it's still a big deal.
I don't think so. I think you're crazy.
And then the dogs are gone rapid. All our dogs are crazy now.
We don't have any dogs.
Yes, but they're crazy now. And the cults are all over, and they're smoking, and they're stealing our pictures.
Wow, no, you're completely making this up.
I am making none of this up, and it will all make sense once we get through our geek history lesson, which is now in session, Leftover Season 1 Review. Hello and welcome to Geek History Lesson. I'm Jason. I'm gonna smoke him if I got him in, man.
I am Ashley Victoria Robinson and prepared to enter your mind university because you, dear listener, have stumbled upon the podcast where we take one character, construct, idea from pop culture and teach you all about it in about 1 hour. But today's episode is a very special, slightly different episode. So if this is your first episode, maybe go back to Batgirl from last week and you'll get more of the formula.
Well, don't tell them to go away already.
I mean, they
crazy.
can, but this is a very special episode. We are doing a review of The Leftover Season 1 because The Leftover Season 2 is about to come out.
Yes, HBO's show that was created by Damon Lindelof and based on the book by the author that I did not write down, which is crazy and really stupid of me, which I will Google as we talk.
We love Damon Lindelof. We were very excited about this show.
Ashley, why? So season 2 is coming back.
Season 2 is coming back.
Will you tell us a little bit about the synopsis of Leftover Season 1? Now, of course, this podcast is going to be full spoiler territory, but this episode, this season came out last year.
So we're way past the 2-week rule, the Vince Gilligan 2-week spoiler-free rule.
So why don't you, Ashley, give us a basic synopsis of The Leftovers Season 1.
Well, The Leftovers takes place 3 years after a global event in which many people disappeared, like Jason alluded to in the beginning, about 2 to 3% of the population.
Some people think it's the rapture.
Some people do, which is not a lot of people, but it's pretty significant. Mm-hmm. And this disappearance is known as the sudden departure, which caused an inexplicable disappearance of about 140 million people. Mm-hmm. 2%, like we said before. The story primarily focuses on a fictional small town of Mapleton, New York, and the Garvey family that lives there. Kevin Garvey is the father. He's the chief of police. His wife, Lori, has joined a cult called the Guilty Remnant that Jason talked about, the smoking cult. More on that later. Their son, Tommy, who is about 20, 18, maybe, somewhere around there.
Maybe 22, maybe.
Well, he's
college.
in college.
He's college age.
He left college. They think he's still in college, but he's not. And their daughter, Jill, who is in high school, maybe 16, is acting out in a very kind of, oh, woe is me sort of way. And they are the focus of the
entire
Leftovers.
Series, basically, yeah. Now, the name that I meant to say is Tom Perrotta. Because Tom Perrotta is the author,
the novelist
of the book that Damon Lindelof invited onto the series. Just to let you know, some of the cast: Justin Theroux plays the lead Garvey, the sheriff of the town.
I think his last name is actually pronounced like Theroux because he's French.
I always hear it Theroux.
I know, but I want to be snobby about it. Amy
Brenneman is also from that. She was a Judge Amy, I believe, from that CBS show. Mm-hmm. She is Garvey's wife who joins the cult. Christopher Eccleston is
the Ninth Doctor himself.
Is the priest about town.
Matt, I think his name is.
Yep, and Liv Tyler is a new convertist to the cult. Like, she joins the cult and you get to see everything from her.
Her character's name is Meg.
Yep. And then Peter Berg, one of my favorite directors, is actually one of the executive producers, and he directed the first 2 episodes. He directed the pilot.
Doesn't he have a cameo in the series as well?
Yes, he's like the gatekeeper. In the pilot, you see the son, Tommy, drive through the gate.
To go to Wayne's
Yes, one of the other weird cults that you learn about. And Peter Berg is the guy like, okay, you can go in. And then when the ATF attacks the place, he gets shot immediately.
That's right.
Yes. So there you go. Damon Lindelof, Tom Perrotta. Leftovers was on HBO. Let's just very quickly, let's talk about our general non-specific thoughts. Ashley.
Yes.
Should people watch The Leftovers Season 1?
Well, here's the thing you need to know. I think you need to know going into Leftovers Season 1. I watched it last year, not long after True Detective had aired, because it kind of went, and we discussed this earlier, it kind of went on HBO, True Detective, Newsroom, Leftovers.
All on Sunday nights.
And I didn't think that something could make me more depressed than True Detective, but be so compelling. And then The Leftovers came along.
Okay.
And the episodes are tough because you watch one and you're like, wow, that was really great.
And I don't know what to think about that.
I'm super bummed out and I'm going to watch cartoons now.
Yeah, I don't know I don't think you can ever binge this series, ever.
I don't think so either. I think it is very well done on all fronts.
Okay.
I would definitely recommend it, but if someone was like a real sensitive soul, I might
avoid it.
I might be a little reticent, but I think this is one of the best shows on television right now, and I think it's not an easy show to watch, and I think that's why it perhaps
doesn't get the acclaim
that it deserves. Like, I know some people who dropped off partway through because they weren't getting the answers to questions that they asked, which is kind of a Lindelof thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that it pays off, and I don't think that you're left with a bag half full by the end. I think it's a very good complete story in the first season.
Well, I think the first season of the show, I agree, yes, it is a very, very tough watch. It's hard to watch. And I think Americans in general, the American TV watching public, doesn't like watching things that are tough. Mm-hmm. We like things that have dragons explode with fire, mm-hmm. or are Southerners that cuss a lot. Mm-hmm. That's why we like True Detective Season 1, and we didn't like True Detective Season 2, although we liked it.
Yes.
But the general public was like, oh, it sucks. And I think the general American public would say the same thing about The Leftover Season 1, which I agree with you. Leftover Season 1, I think, one of the best television shows I've ever seen in my entire life.
Yes.
Not even last year, of my entire life.
If I could remember way back to when we did our 2014 year in review, I think we talked about this in the television section.
I think we did. I think we did too. Interesting thing, I wanted to bring this up because Damon Lindelof and some of his writers and actors were on the Nerdist Writers Panel podcast mm-hmm. recently. And Damon Lindelof said that he equated the show to watching the show is like what it's like for people losing someone when they die. He said that the basic theme of the show is like people experiencing a loss in your life, a death in your family.
It is like watching people mourn, yes.
He has more. He says that in one instant they're gone and you cannot explain it. And he also said that this whole show is like the feeling for what it's like when people go through an earthquake. Like suddenly after you go through an earthquake, he says like for that whole week after, you're just so worried about the earthquake and you're unnerved because you can't do anything about it. And he said that's the theme and the metaphor of this show. It's a parallel between that weird, uneasy feeling when you experience something that you cannot change and loss when people just pop and they're gone and you cannot explain it. And he's like this is a giant metaphor for death on a global scale.
I would say that he succeeds in that in every respect.
Mm-hmm. I think it's a great show. I really like it. I hate the theme song, but everything else, I think it's well acted. It is so tough to watch. It is, but you know what? That I think is the best art.
Yes.
It's
challenging.
Yes. The art that challenges you, that makes you think like, I don't know. That's what I like. And also too, I feel Leftover Season 1 is very much like the entire series of Lost. And I'm going to lose some people right here. And to anybody that is a Lost hater, I say this. Go back and stick through it. Because I think Leftover Season 1 ends exactly like Lost ends. Mm-hmm. Every character gets a conclusion. Every character gets a conclusion. And that's what matters. It is.
Mic drop.
It is. Because, I mean, we knew from episode 1 that in The Leftovers, we were never going to figure out why those people disappeared.
We were never going to be told it was God. We were never going to be told it was not God.
No, because I like the idea that if you were in that situation, you'd never know.
Exactly.
You'd never figure it out. Mm-hmm. And again, if it's a parallel for death, we're never going to figure out why people die.
Exactly.
Ever. It's never going to happen. Do you walk around life being like, well, damn it, I wish this was explained, and this life sucks because it wasn't?
I think some people do.
Well, yeah, surprise, some people do. But yes, I think the Garveys get a conclusion, and they get to sort of like an equilibrium at the end of the season.
Each character does, and then they, as a unit, I think, do as well.
Together, yes. They bond together.
As a family.
So let's move on to some basic sections. We have, of course, best character, worst character, and stuff like that. So, Ashley, who was the best character in The Leftover Season 1?
The best character, I have two answers for this. Much like last time. Much like in True Detective, I think the best character is different than my favorite character.
So you're going to give us both?
I'm going to give you both.
Okay.
I think the best character as far as performance goes is Christopher Eccleston as Matt.
Matt Jameson.
The local town preacher. Mm-hmm. He's flawless. His dialect is
Tell us a little bit about his
amazing.
character in case people don't know.
He is the local preacher, and people are looking to him for answers. He's not giving it to them. So in the 3 years since the sudden disappearance, people have kind of fallen away from his flock. He is struggling with whether or not he believes in God. His wife was basically rendered into a vegetable during...
Well, somebody popped out of their car, and that car hit them head on.
Yes.
And his wife's been in coma since.
And he survived, and he's been taking care of her, so that is weighing on him. The church is bankrupt. He does some questionable things in order to keep the church from being bankrupt.
Well, I find it interesting you haven't brought up what I think is the most interesting aspect about his character.
Oh, please.
The fact that he goes around town with flyers.
Oh, yes.
That he's been investigating people in the town that have disappeared and figuring out, like, he finds out this one character
that they were bad.
Yeah, this one character's husband like cheated on her entire marriage, and he's like, well, why was she he's kind of like
trying to prove that it wasn't the rapture, that the good people weren't taken.
Yes, that it wasn't God, because he can't come to grips with why he wasn't taken.
Yes.
So his solution is that it wasn't God, because all these bad people were taken away, and he's going around town revealing the bad people's secrets that were taken.
And I'm going to reveal something about myself that might lose me some people, but I'm not like a religious traditionalist.
Okay.
And I think he is the most compelling character to watch.
Mm-hmm.
And I really, really empathize with him. But my favorite character is a character named Nora Durst, who's played by an actress named Carrie Coon, who you might recognize from Gone Girl.
Oh, yeah.
She's Ben Affleck's sister in that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I like Nora the best because she feels to me the most like what I would do.
Mm-hmm.
Like, she's trying so desperately. She's a mother in her 30s. Her husband and her 2 really bratty kids, her husband who's cheating on her, they all pop out of her life, and she is left alone to pick up the pieces. And she deals with it by putting up this wall and kind of being disaffected and just taking a job and just putting one foot in front of the other and doing it. And we see her try to open up to Kevin Garvey, and it almost works, and then it doesn't.
And then it does.
Well, and finally, in the end, it does. And I just think that Carrie Coon plays it so close to the vest that I just want to watch her all the time.
She also has another interesting job, and that is that she gets hired by the government.
She's basically a census worker.
Well, yeah, to give people a settlement, like a $50,000 settlement if they lost somebody, just to basically do like a 5-hour interview on camera, is because the government is trying to put together a correlation of why these people disappeared.
Yeah, they're looking for patterns.
They're looking for patterns.
And there is an episode where you see all of that clipped together, and you see the invasive kind of questions that she has to ask.
Yeah, because like the episode that's very powerful is that she goes and interviews
two parents who lost a son.
of a son with Down syndrome, and then she starts asking the parents about like his sexual predilections.
Yeah, because they're looking for any kind of correlation that they can make.
Anything, and that's the idea is that they get this $50,000 because
she's invading their life.
Because they're asking a pretty, well, I mean, tasteless,
completely,
but very scientific.
Yes,
because they're looking for anything
in the way that going to a doctor is tasteless.
But see, I think that's a fascinating thing about this show is that I think that would happen.
Yeah,
I think the government would do that. I think it'd be for $25,000. I don't think it'd be $50,000.
yeah. Let's be real.
I think the government would do that if this happened. And that's another thing that I admire about this show is I think this, if it is the rapture, whatever, I mean, that's the most, you can tell that's where Tom, I always forgot his name, Perrotta. That's where he started. He was like, what if this idea actually happened? That's where he started. But in his book and in the TV show, they give no answers.
Well, the show and the book, they are secular, whereas something like the Left Behind series is a religious book. This story is based in a secular society with secular ideas.
Well, there's people, and the idea of this series is almost like, what would people in reality deal with this? How would they deal with this?
And this show too kind of plays on the idea that like people suck, and they do some bad things. And one of Nora's really questionable coping mechanism is she will call a prostitute to come over. She'll put on a bulletproof vest and she will have them shoot her. Yeah, and she pays them a lot of money just so that she can feel again. Yes, and. Yeah, when you see it, like at first, it seems really weird. And you're like, wow, this is pretty extreme. But the more you learn about her character, she would totally do that. And that's why when she opens up to Kevin later on, it's so meaningful.
Well, the other interesting thing that this show does is they wait until episode 9. There's 10 episodes in the season. They wait until episode 9 to show you where each of the main characters was.
Where they came from, yeah.
On the day of the disappearance, the sudden departure, which is interesting, especially when you see Loris. Like that she was in the kitchen.
Nora,
I'm sorry.
Nora and Lori.
Nora and Lori, yeah. When she was in the kitchen and her two little kids were yelling.
Yeah.
And the dad was there on the phone. And then like they're yelling, and then it just stops.
Yeah, it's just silent.
And then she turns around and they're gone. I do appreciate that in the show. We don't ever actually get to see anybody go out of frame.
No.
It's always like we cut to another angle, we see the reaction of the person, then we cut back and they're gone.
Yeah, exactly.
Which I like. I appreciate it, yeah.
And now that we've gone down this rabbit hole, who is your favorite character?
Well, that's kind of the reason I let us go down the favorite. The best character I think on the show is Matt Jameson, Christopher Eccleston.
Yeah.
Because the third episode is all about him. He's going to lose the church. The church is going to go bankrupt. And so he remembers that Kevin Garvey's dad, who was the old chief of police before the sudden departures, had told him that he left him something in the backyard. He unburies it, and it's a bunch of money. So the priest decides to go to a casino, puts it all on like red twice, and wins both times. And he's getting ready to go back to the church, and then he's robbed.
Yep.
He's robbed in the parking lot. And I have never had such a visceral reaction to a TV show before.
Because then in order to keep the money, he commits a mortal sin.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Yeah.
What does he do? Remind me.
He beats the guy's head in.
That's right. He
kills a guy.
He kills the guy. I forgot about it.
Later on, he is party to another suicide ? Murder ?
Oh, with the guilty remnant.
Yeah,
Kevin.
yeah.
Uh-huh.
With alongside Kevin.
So he does a lot of questionable things.
He does a lot of things that
in the service of his deity.
Right, but if you're a good Christian, you don't do.
Yes.
Which is what I think makes this interesting, and it's what makes him feel like the most real character as well. Because he's so flawed.
I forgot about the murder. Wow.
Yeah, he beats the guy's head in.
Yeah, that's
because
right.
Because it's a guy and a girl, it's a couple
who
he's talking to inside the casino.
Because in a parking lot, and then they go back to their car, and then he runs over to the car and just beats the window in. Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And it's, well, Jason and I watched that episode together, and we were both like screaming at the TV.
Well, every time he kept putting it back on red, we were like, no, go! You have like $200,000. Get the hell out of there.
Enough.
That's enough.
You live in upstate New York, it'll be fine.
Who was the worst character in the Leftover season 1?
So for the worst character, I was going to say these characters that Jason and I affectionately referred to as the Idiot Twins.
Oh, the Idiot Twins.
Who are played
by Jill.
Yes, who are played by Charlie and Max Carver, that people might know from Teen Wolf, who I'm not a fan of. I'm sure they're lovely. But they're just there to be like idiot boys. I would say the worst character of the main cast is Tommy Garvey. He is Kevin's son by another man.
And fill us in about basically what he does the entire season.
Tommy Garvey, played by Chris Zylka, 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 I don't know. Flash Thompson from The Amazing Spider-Man, is A, not a very good actor, and B, he has something interesting to do, but it's so prototypical, I'm a 20-year-old dude who hates my parents. So he drops out of college. He joins a cult led by a fake psychic named Wayne, who I don't know the actor's name here, but is so good.
We've seen him in a couple other things since then.
He's so compelling to watch. And then what happens to him is like, whoa, very sudden. He joins this cult where basically he's a bodyguard for these young Asian women who are only there so that Wayne can impregnate them.
The virgins for Wayne, yes.
And he protects... The compound gets raided, so each bodyguard is assigned a girl to take and basically flee with. And then Wayne will come for them because Wayne is pseudo-Jesus. And the girl that he is paired up with, in his first episode, there are overtones that he has the hots for her.
Yep. It's heavily implied.
Yeah. She gives birth to a baby girl instead of a baby boy. Typical, and she leaves the baby with him. And it is then and only then that he thinks, maybe my parents weren't so bad after all, dumps the baby with his dad and Nora, and then runs off with his mom, who decides she doesn't want to be part of the guilty remnant anymore.
Not even with the dad and Nora, he just leaves it on the porch.
On the porch. And what I don't like about it is that it's the part of myself that I didn't like when I was a teenager. It's that just like...
When you left babies on porches?
Exactly. It was a tough time. And I don't like that woe is me, I can't ask anyone for help because I'm so unique that like I'll figure it out in the end. And I just had no empathy for how far up his butt his head was.
Got it.
Because if he would have just reached out for help, so much of what happened and so much of his suffering could have been avoided. And again, I don't think the actor made good enough choices to make that kind of bland storyline compelling.
And also, too, they've shown so many times on the show that Kevin, his dad, would have done anything for him.
And the thing about Kevin Garvey is like Peter in House of Cards.
Okay.
You want to like him so bad, and he's trying so hard, but he keeps screwing things up because he just can't do it right.
Yep.
And it really sucks that he would have done anything to help Tommy, and Tommy just doesn't care.
Because there's a recurring thing in almost every episode where he calls Tommy's phone and gets his voicemail and is like, Tommy, please call me back.
Yeah, I need to talk to you.
Yeah, exactly.
So Tommy disappointed me.
That's a good way of putting Kevin. I know that's exactly how I feel about Kevin too. Like, you want him to succeed, and he keeps screwing up.
And you keep liking him in spite of the fact that he keeps screwing up, and he's horrible because he's such a good person at his core. Mm-hmm. But he can't let himself be a good person.
No,
kind of like Ray Falcoro. He can't quite
get there. Can't quite get there. Yep.
So who did you say is the worst character?
Well, my worst character in the show, I felt, was Liv Tyler as Megan Abbott. And we meet her. She's a woman that's about to get married. And then suddenly out of nowhere, they don't really give you a lot of context for why she does this.
They don't really earn it.
She just suddenly joins the Guilty Remnant. Now, if you've never seen the show, of course, the Guilty Remnant is this group of men and women who live in these suburban houses. They wear all white, and they're one of the many cults that have sprung up since the sudden departure. Mm-hmm. We learned that cults have kind of become this thing because every cult has the answer for why they did it.
Yep.
And this cult dresses in white, doesn't speak, and smokes all the time.
And they steal people's photos.
Because they're trying to get people to not forget.
The people who left.
Yes. They're thinking that people are going to go on and like forget and move on. And they're like, no, this happened in the world. We must remember it. And that the idea behind the cigarette smoking is that they're trying to kill themselves. They all basically want to die. So I don't know. And
the white is like maybe an allegory for angels, maybe an allegory for purity.
Yeah, something in there, something like that. And it's just, they don't explain her enough for me.
Well, and again, here's the thing about Liv Tyler. Liv Tyler was a great Arwen because all she had to do was look pretty and say some cryptic lines. Just like Orlando Bloom was a great Legolas because he had to look pretty and say some cryptic lines.
Was talk like this, Aragorn.
She's not a great actor.
What? No.
And again, if she had been a better actor, she could have maybe made that part more interesting, and you maybe would have empathized with her a little bit more.
Well, she has a good agent. It's all good.
She's famous, man. She got a famous dad.
Yep. Famous dads.
Yeah.
And one place that we will never talk about famous dads. Well, we could. And that is if you go over to patreon.com/Jawiin. That's Jawiin. You can help support Geek History Lesson and the videos like the Red Shirt Diaries and all the other videos on our youtube.com/Jawiin. And we just introduced something last week. We think it's really cool. It's called Geek History Lesson Extra.
Yes.
It is an extra Geek History lesson. It is like 10 to 15 minutes of Ashley and I talking about the subject. So a day after this episode appears on iTunes and Stitcher, on the Patreon feed, you will find an exclusive MP3 that you can only find on Patreon of us talking about stuff like this. And it is at the $5 level. If that's too expensive for your blood, just $5 a month. You can go $3 a month, and you get to listen to Geek History Lesson a day early. We'll give you the MP3. You can download it to any device you have. Listen to it a day. Be cooler than all the other non-cool, non-listen Geek History Lesson kids out there. Patreon.com/Jawiin helps keep the lights on in the Mind University, and we want to thank all our patrons for making this show possible. You all rock. And now back to The Leftovers Season 1. Ashley,
Jason,
what was the best scene in The Leftovers Season 1?
I think that the best scene in The Leftovers was when Christopher Eccleston beat someone's head in the parking lot. That's
dark and disturbing.
It is dark and disturbing, but the reason that I picked that is because it is the only scene that you and I screamed at the television for. Mm-hmm. So I feel like if TV and...
So if I had screamed at Kevin Garvey shooting at dogs, you'd have been like, best scene.
Best scene. I just think there's...
Oh, the puppies!
I think there's something to be said for TV, film, web content, something that's not live, something that is static. And if it can make you react in that visceral a way, if it's yelling, if it's crying, if it's laughing, I think that's incredibly powerful, and I think that deserves a lot of credit. So is it my favorite scene to watch over and over again? No, but I think objectively it is the best. And I think it transcends the story and a lot of the other stuff that's going on in the show. So that's why, yes, Christopher Eccleston, Matt Jameson, killing a gangster.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I was gonna say when Nora cries in like her doorway,
that's a good
just
one.
for the shot of like
it's a good
her like breaking down because it's so beautiful.
It's an amazing performance. Yeah, it's really good.
But
all right,
I like people in pain in the show.
Apparently.
What would you say is the best scene?
My favorite scene in all of the Leftovers season 1 is where the head of the guilty remnant and Amy Brenneman go to a diner.
That's
eat
a great
pancakes.
Scene. That's a great scene.
I'm totally joking. It's not my favorite. I was gonna say
really because the one where she talks. That's such a great scene.
It is a good scene, but it's not my favorite scene. my actual favorite scene is the same as yours. So I wanted to be different. I actually think one of my favorite scenes. Since I agree with you, that episode is so visceral, so good. I actually prefer him gambling a little bit more to him beating in the head of the guy because that's like, oh my god, you idiot! Oh my god, you idiot! And that the fact that it works out. I actually really like every scene that Kevin Garvey has with his dad. And in episode 9, there's a really good. It's a flashback to where you see By the way, the episode 3, the one you were talking about, is called 2 Boats and a Helicopter.
There you go.
Just fun time. I don't know the title of episode 9.
Episode 9 is called The Garveys at Their Best.
Okay, The Garveys at Their Best. There is a surprise party for Kevin Garvey's dad. And Kevin Garvey goes upstairs on the road and he's smoking, and nobody's supposed to know that he's smoking. And his dad comes up there, and his dad is like, "Oh, I almost believed that everything was happy."
Yeah.
And because Kevin's at the point in his life, he has the rich wife, he has a great house, he has 2 great kids. But he says in the speech that he's like,
what more could I want?
What more could I want? But it doesn't seem like it's enough.
Yeah.
And he's like, will it ever be enough? And his dad basically says, cut the crap.
It is, because it is enough.
It is enough. Just relax. Like he says that, I don't know. I think it's a life lesson that a lot of people need to learn, and it's very astute of his dad. His dad is always able to see, because Kevin puts up this big wall.
He does.
And he fakes everybody out. Like, because through most of season 1, he's going bonkers town.
Yeah.
Like, he cannot deal with it. And everybody thinks he's dealing with it very well, but he's totally not. And I love that his dad can totally see the crap. And I love all the scenes with his dad trying to get him to take the National Geographic and be like, accept your destiny,
Yeah.
All that kind of stuff.
Cool.
I don't know. Scott Glenn's great, and any scene with Scott Glenn is amazing. That's the guy who plays his dad.
It's also the idea of not necessarily like lowering your expectations, but managing your expectations.
The great adage of Kevin Smith.
Just because you think you deserve something doesn't mean that you do. Like, and sometimes something is good enough. You're not always going to get the perfect version of everything.
Well, life is not perfect.
Yeah.
Nothing in life is perfect, and nothing in life will go the way that you want it to. So you have to manage your expectations and decide, when are you happy? When is that enough?
Yeah.
And it's interesting because Kevin Garvey does have everything.
He has a bomb-ass house, too.
and a hot wife. And both his kids are very nice and well-behaved.
And they're going to get a cute dog.
Yeah, like it's nuts. Like his daughter, before the sudden departure, when her mom is like, oh, I'm the worst mom ever. And she's like, no, you're the best mom ever.
Yeah.
And at the time, their son is even like, hey, Dad, help me out. And he's like, done.
Yeah.
Like
no question asked.
They have a giant pool.
Yeah.
Like, his life is awesome. Mm-hmm. And he lives in a nice area in a nice state.
Yeah.
Like, shut the hell up, dude.
It's not that bad.
Yeah, cool. What was the worst scene in The Leftovers season 1?
The worst scene in The Leftovers season 1, I think I kind of have 2 answers for this. The scenes that I think were the most poorly constructed were the ones with Tommy and the pregnant girl, because she wasn't very good either, and her fake belly was real fake. And I didn't believe that they cared about each other. I didn't care about what they were doing, and they would show up in these episodes and just run around and be idiots. And I'd be like, if you would just, this is the thing that Jason says. If I could have just slapped you guys and told you to grow the hell up, you wouldn't have any problems right now. We could have fixed all of this.
Well, I say that because there's no conflict in your scene. If I can walk up to any of your characters, slap them, and solve the scene.
And I feel like all of their scenes alone together, which is most of his scenes, were that.
Got it.
But the scene that made me like the most uncomfortable, but not in, oh, this is interesting drama, just like, oh, this is kind of gross. There's a scene where Jill and the idiot twins go to a party, and they're playing spin the bottle with like an app on their phone.
I was waiting for you to say the refrigerator, but keep going.
No,
Because the girl gets locked in a refrigerator in this because they're playing around and screwing around.
yeah, that didn't. But there's one where it's one of them is like choke, and so like she goes in bed with this guy, and this is the part where you take your kids away from the podcast in 3, 2, 1. He's jerking off, and she's like choking him. And
wow,
I just thought it was so icky.
I now have to make this. I have to make this explicit now.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
But that was I think that was like one of the worst scenes. And I know that
I completely forgot about that scene.
I didn't. And I know that it succeeds because that's exactly the reaction that you're supposed to have. But
it is HBO. It's an HBO show.
I really didn't like. There's a lot of sex in this, but.
There's a lot of sex in life.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but HBO, it's kind of there.
Okay.
Kind of thing. So I'm sorry that I made this an explicit podcast.
It's okay. No worries.
What did you think was the worst scene?
The worst scene I felt was in episode 8, and it was where Jill, the younger daughter of the Garbies, suddenly out of nowhere in the final scene decides to join her mom in the guilty remnant. And there's nothing. Can you tell that my because here's the thing. They set up the guilty remnant as this really weird cult, this really involved cult. So to me, why people join has to be a big deal.
It has to be strong.
Because they're
and Lori has that, her mom.
We see Lori. Like Lori, you find out that Lori on the day of the sudden departure she was pregnant and watched the baby disappear out of the womb. Mm-hmm. That would screw you up.
That would make you want answers.
Yes. The daughter just kind of gets in a fight with her dad. Mm-hmm. And then is like, I'm going to go join the cult. You know, and yeah, there's not enough explanation because this cult is so jarring. Mm-hmm. And I feel it would have to be something so huge. So a fight with your dad, I think, is a terrible reason. They did it for a story reason, and then to me, they didn't have enough stakes to back it up.
Yeah, they did it to have the final scene in that episode.
Yes, they did it so that in the season finale, Kevin could go rescue his daughter out of the fire. Yeah, that's exactly why they did that.
I mean, and that's a great scene, but they don't quite do a good job earning it.
Mm-hmm. Now, Ashley, what do you think is the best episode of season 1 of The Leftovers?
I think that the best episode in season 1 of The Leftovers is one that we've already talked about. It is episode 9, The Garbies at Their Best.
That is my favorite episode as well.
You didn't know what it was called earlier.
I know, and it's so stupid because I have it in my notes right here.
Oh, yeah. I would say that is the one that I like the least.
Well, let me read the synopsis for it.
Or the one I like the most.
So a flashback recounts Mapleton's residents' experiences during the days leading up to the departure. A surprise Mapleton Person of the Year victory party is thrown for Kevin's father. Lori is revealed to be a psychiatrist, and Patty is her patient. Patty is the leader of the guilty remnant. And then you find out that during the departure, Kevin is having sex with a woman when she disappears. Nora snaps at her family right before they disappear. Jill and Tommy form a circuit at a science fair when one of the children in the circle disappear. And Lori has an ultrasound and witnesses the disappearance of the fetus. Mm-hmm. Now, that last scene, that her witnessing the fetus disappearing, is the last scene in the show.
Yes.
And they show you how happy they are and how amazing the house is. And it is. I think it's the greatest episode of the season because it shows you them before they're just depressed.
Right. And I think it should have come a little earlier in the season than episode 9, but I understand why that is not the pilot.
Yes.
Because I think it's more interesting to see where they are now and then to flashback than to start them there and then have it all kind of spiral downhill from there.
They waited. They waited at the exact moment. We could not have gone another episode. So say they had like a 12 episode season.
Yeah.
They could not have made that episode 10 because I probably would have jumped.
You think?
Yes, because I remember we talked about this when we watched season 1. By episode 8, you needed answers.
Yes,
because you were at the point of like, we don't know these characters well enough. We need to see why they're so screwed up.
And they had talked a lot about events before without paying them off. That's true.
And we didn't know about them, and we were at the point that we needed answers about that. So I totally agree with you. It is the best episode of The Leftovers by far. Ashley.
Jason.
What's the worst episode of The Leftovers? There's only 10.
The worst episode of The Leftovers, and I don't think any of them are bad, but this is how we structure these reviews. is episode number 4, BJ and the AC. Here is a brief synopsis. Christmas comes to Mapleton, but not without its problems. Kevin is tasked with finding the baby Jesus from the town's nativity scene, which was stolen by his own daughter Jill, unbeknownst to him. Eventually, the idiot twins leave the baby Jesus on Kevin's doorstep, but another doll is placed in the nativity scene. Before Kevin can return the doll, Tom takes a pregnant Christine to the hospital. On the night of the Christmas ball, guilty remnant members sneak into Mapleton's homes and remove the pictures of the departed. Here's the reason why I picked that to be the worst episode.
You don't like nativity scenes, we get it.
I have neutral feelings about nativity scenes.
All right.
I think you should be representative of all religion holidays, but that's another podcast.
Okay, cool.
What I don't like about that episode is that I think that the mistake of the opening credits of The Leftovers is that they make you think it's a rapture show. Mm-hmm. And the show is not about Christianity.
You remember when I pitched you what I thought the opening credits should be?
Yes.
And what I thought
I agree with you.
Yeah, what I thought the opening credits should be is just shots of empty cars, empty buildings, empty desk chairs. Like it's all the people that just disappeared.
Yes, I agree. But so my problem with this is that the show is not about Christianity. There are Christian characters. Mm-hmm. There are atheist characters. There are people of different faith. There are
people
all
that
these
think
weird
it's aliens.
cults. Yeah. So I think that the Christian overtones with it being holiday time is really kind of heavy-handed for my taste.
Yep.
And that's what I don't like about it. And then I think like they're really stretching the metaphor with like baby Jesus is missing and then like Christine is pregnant and gonna have a baby that was supposed to be like the savior. Like I think it was too heavy-handed, and more so here than in any of the other episodes. I don't think it's a bad episode, but if I have to think about it, it's probably the one I enjoyed the least for those reasons. I don't know. What do you think is the worst episode?
I think the worst episode is the only episode of the season that's named after a town, and that episode is called Cairo. Now, Cairo. Now, let me give you a little bit of setup. Throughout the season 1 of The Leftovers, Kevin Garvey. Okay. Kevin Garvey had been, chasing down dogs. The dogs have gone rapid and shooting them with this guy called Dean. And there's a lot of nights where he doesn't remember it. Mm-hmm. Like, he doesn't remember. They don't really quite explain that.
Yeah.
Which is a little weird. And then in this episode, in Cairo, you find out that Kevin and Dean kidnapped Patty, the leader of the guilty remnant, and threw her in a cabin for no reason. They don't ever explain it.
Because Dean wanted to.
Yeah, but they don't really explain Dean that much either. Because Dean is like this weird character for a while that I thought I actually thought you were going to find out that Dean doesn't exist.
I thought so too, and I thought it was going to be a thing where like, oh, Dean is a Satan analog.
Or something like that.
But then he talks to people and he's like, no, Dean.
He talks
to Dean.
Yeah, other people see Dean. So basically, Patty basically finally speaks to Kevin for the very first time and basically tells her all about the guilty remnant. And that's the episode where you learn, like, we're trying to make people not forget.
Yeah.
But then she tries to get Kevin and Dean to kill her because that's what she wants, stuff like that.
She wants to be martyred.
Yes. And eventually Kevin refuses and Patty basically commits suicide.
She auto-asphyxiates. She ties a bag around her head.
Yeah, she kills herself, so Kevin has to deal with it. And then I think in the next episode he calls Matt Jameson.
Because Dean leaves.
Yeah, because Dean just like takes off.
Yeah.
But I felt that storyline where they just like randomly like kidnapped her for no damn reason just didn't do anything to the show. It didn't move anything over. Like we learned about the guilty remnant finally, but like it just seems so out of place and so weird.
Well, it was kind of like your issue with the Jill thing earlier with her running away to the guilty remnant. They did it for the payoff at the end of that conflict.
Yes.
As opposed to because the conflict grew them as characters.
Yes. Yeah. They totally did it so that Patty could Dark Knight Returns herself in front of Kevin.
Yeah.
Basically. But they didn't. Yeah. It made no sense. And that's why it's my least favorite episode, because it's just like, what is this? Like, why would Kevin do this? No. And again, they don't pay off the Kevin and Dean thing. They never explain like why Kevin is having these weird blackouts and going out in the middle of the night and shooting dogs.
I mean, I think it's implicitly because you see him taking prescription pills up until that point, and then he stops. So I think the idea is that he's numbing himself to the point where he can't remember, and that's why he's not sure what's real anymore.
Okay.
But again,
seems kind of lazy, but okay.
They never come out and explain it.
Yeah, that's a little, all right. That's why it's my worst. Cairo.
There you go.
Why it's called Cairo? I don't know.
Because people self-asphyxiate.
Is there a Cairo in New York?
Cairo. Maybe
they're up by Cairo, New York. I don't know.
know.
So anyways, let's get to the final section of this podcast.
Yes.
Ashley, watch it or skip it.
Dude, totally watch it.
But not with the kids.
No.
There's weird
it becomes an
scenes.
explicit podcast.
Yep.
Watch it. Watch one episode a day. And then watch something real happy after.
I don't know if I'd even say one a day. I would say like watch one a week.
Well, whatever. But space it out.
Yeah, like you cannot binge the show. You will.
I mean, we're not telling you what to do. You can do whatever you want, but I wouldn't recommend it.
There's the geek history lesson recommendation is do not binge the show because you will probably kill yourself. And we don't want that. Nobody wants that.
Exactly.
Yes. I would say once a week because you get to forget enough of it.
But you would say watch it.
Yes, definitely watch it. This is a show that I thought was so good. This is how I now determine TV shows at their worth. Will I buy it? This one came very close to me buying it. The reason why I didn't is because I was like, man, I cannot think of a reason of when I would ever watch this again.
And it turns out we watched an episode last night.
Well,
we
watched an episode last night to refresh ourselves before this podcast. I would watch all of season 1 again.
Yeah.
But I think that would be it.
I would watch it again if I was with somebody who wanted to.
Oh, totally.
You know, like if someone was like, I've never seen it, and I'm thinking about watching it, do you want to watch it with me?
But I don't know if this is one I'm going to watch it so much that I need to own it.
Yeah.
So
for sure.
that's why that. But totally watch it. It is, I would say, just based off the first season, one of the best television shows I've ever seen in my life.
Yes, I would easily say it is on par with True Detective season 1. I don't know which one I liked more, but Leftovers is more to my taste than True Detective season 1.
True Detective was great. This was more real.
Yes.
This was way more real. And this one made me ponder questions that True Detective never did. Like this, I love a show that puts you in the place of the characters and makes you ask yourself, would I act like that? Would I do this? That's why this is why I say to this day, Breaking Bad is so popular because everybody wants to ask that question. Would I have done what Walter White did?
Yeah.
Would I, if pushed to that far, would I have become this murderous drug kingpin? And I think for a lot of people, the answer is more yes than no. And that's the interesting conundrum. And Leftovers is the same thing. It's like, if we were in those situations, would we join the guilty remnant? Would we go join the Wayne cult? Would we just go crazy with pills and shoot dogs in the night?
If we have to be one of the characters in The Leftovers.
Who are you?
I'm Nora.
I'm totally Kevin.
And you're Kevin. Yeah, absolutely. I'm not saying that that's what you would do, but if you have to pick one of those characters, like that's who you would be. Yes.
I'm going to shoot the dogs. All right.
No. You're not going to shoot the dogs. No, your friend is going to shoot the dogs.
No, Kevin shot the dogs.
He shot the deer.
I'm going to go a lot of jogging, though. I'll probably look pretty good.
You are. And then
I'm gonna look pretty good. Don't bring that up.
And then people will go crazy for your jogging on the internet.
Did they go crazy for Kevin's jogging?
Tumblr did.
Oh, right. Is there a lot of cool gifs?
If you go to Tumblr and search Kevin Garvey, you'll find some cool running gifs.
We're not going to go any further than that. Okay. I think that's good enough. Definitely watch it. Yes?
Definitely watch it.
Cool.
That's a sufficiently cryptic ending.
5 out of 5 stars. 5 being the best. What would you give it? I'm just curious.
Well, Nothing Man Made is perfect.
No.
I would give it like 4.75.
I'd say 4.5.
You know?
Yeah, it's a 4.5.
It's pretty. I don't know. I can't tell you what I watched that is a 5.
You know, the funny thing about it, the Emmys were very recently, last week, and no nominations for The Leftovers, which, of course, because it's a difficult show.
Because it's too smart.
Yeah, because it's too smart.
I'm really sorry if there's any fans of what I'm about to mention out there, but Big Bang Theory has a lot of Emmys. You're not going to convince me that's a good show. I'm really sorry.
And that's a good place to end this podcast about The Leftovers Season 1. Watch it. Season 2 is out on the airwaves soon? Very soon.
Very soon.
This week. or in the past, depending on where you're listening.
Then go on HBO Go.
Depending on where you are in the space-time continuum when you listen to this podcast, it's probably on the air.
It's either like right now or
a couple of days. I don't know. There you go. So if you want more of Geek History Lesson, make sure you go to iTunes and Stitcher. Please subscribe and give us a rating, because that helps us in the search rankings. I don't know if you know this, but in iTunes, when you search something for iTunes, say you're like, I'm looking for a geeky podcast, the ones that have more reviews get ranked higher, and it lets listeners, and that helps us out.
That's how awesome people like Peter find us.
Yes. You can also give us suggestions if there are other TV shows that you think are out there that are as good as The Leftovers or worse than The Leftovers. You know, we haven't done...
Everyone's going to say Big Bang Theory.
Well, we haven't done a bad TV show yet. But
if we do it and we say this show is bad, then it's gonna be someone's favorite TV show.
Well, someone also is gonna be out there and probably hates The Leftovers, and they're probably gonna be like, oh, they're gonna skip this episode. But I put that challenge out there to our listeners right now. Hashtag bad TV watch. Wait, no.
Someone is gonna say Lost just to piss you off.
Hashtag bad GHL TV watch. No. Hashtag bad TV watch. Okay, out there on Twitter, hashtag bad TV watch, and I want you to suggest
one season,
less
than 20 episodes.
No, less than 25. Well, because
you want to watch 24 episodes of some crap TV show?
Well, because sometimes older TV shows, like say if they give us The Jeffersons, it's going to be like 25 episodes. 25 episodes.
The Jeffersons isn't bad though.
Hey, Arrow has like 22, so you can't limit it at 20.
Sure you can.
So. Hashtag bad TV show. Now,
it's my podcast. I can do what I want.
We're not going to say that we're actually going to do it.
We just want to see.
But we want to see what your suggestions are. Like, we want to see what your suggestions are. And you know what? Bring Lost. Bring it. I dare you. I double dog dare you, because I won't pick it. All right. Where can they do that on social media?
They can do that at www.geekhistorylesson.com and facebook.com/geekhistorylesson.
But where would they use this hashtag? Who should they hashtag to? Hashtag bad TV watch.
To you on Twitter at Jawiin, Jawiin.
And what's your Twitter?
I don't want people to hashtag bad TV watch to me.
Yes, at Ashley V. Robinson. It's exactly how you think it's spelled. And if you want more Geek History Lesson, don't forget to go to patreon.com/Jawiin, become a $5 patron of this podcast, and you're going to get 15 more minutes of this episode, which is really, really cool. And every little bit helps. Thank you so much for listening. Please don't get left behind and listen to more Geek History Lessons. I'm Jason Inman.
I'm Ashley Victoria Robinson.
And Professor Ashley, before you leave this veil that we call Earth.
Swallow my microphone?
Yes, we get up and tight and close, and before you go, pop some pills and kill dogs and smash a guy's head in a casino, will you please dismiss the Earth?
Everyone's dismissed. Like 2%.
There's a deer in the room. There's a deer in the room, Ashley.
Why don't you just send the dogs after it?
Oh, that's right. I should do that.